The midnight dare. People have always whispered about ghosts, stories of cursed houses, haunted mirrors, and shadowy figures standing silently at the foot of your bed. These tales sometimes ancient, sometimes no older than last week, are passed down like warnings. And one of the most terrifying legends whispered across schools in America is about a ghostly woman named Bloody Mary. No one knew exactly when the legend began, but every teenager had heard some version of it. Go into a dark bathroom at exactly midnight. Stand in front of the mirror with the door locked and lights off. Look directly into the glass and say her name 3 times. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Then she'll come. Some said she would just appear stirring, her face twisted, bloody, and wrong. Others said she would scream so loud it cracked glass. A few claimed she would drag you into the mirror, but most people laughed it off, calling it just a dumb sleepover dare. That's exactly what Ava, Jamie, Liz, and Marcus thought until that night. It was a cold Friday in October, the kind where the wind made the trees scratch the windows like fingernails. Their school, Hollow Creek High, had an old west wing that had been closed off for years. No one cleaned there. No one dared go near it unless they were looking for trouble or trying to prove something. The 4 friends were inseparable. Ava, the skeptic, always grounded and smart. Jamie, the curious one, obsessed with horror. Liz, the nervous girl with too much imagination. Marcus, the joker who never took anything seriously. After hearing one of the seniors mention that the West Wing had a mirror left behind in the abandoned restroom, Jamie's eyes lit up. Let's do it. Let's summon Bloody Mary tonight. For real, he said, grinning like it was just another TikTok challenge. Ava rolled her eyes. Really, you believe that garbage? It's just a game, Marcus said, nudging Liz. Come on, we'll bring candles, record it for fun. Maybe go viral. Liz hesitated, biting her lip. I don't know, my cousin once said her friend tried it and... Jamie cut her off. Perfect, that means it's working. Midnight. We meet at the West Wing. At 11:58 p.m. They sneaked into the building. No lights. The hallway smelled like mold and forgotten things. Dust floated in the air like ghostly particles, and every step echoed like a footstep that wasn't theirs. They pushed open the door to the abandoned girls' restroom. It was exactly as Jamie had described, a large cracked mirror above rusted sinks, dust-covered tiles, and silence so thick it rang in their ears. Ava lit the candles. Marcus placed his phone on a ledge, recording everything. Liz stayed close to the door, fingers trembling. It's just a game, Jamie whispered, stepping in front of the mirror. Say it with me. No, Liz backed up. I don't want to. You don't have to, Ava said firmly. We'll do it and get it over with. The 3 of them stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the mirror. Their faces flickered in the candlelight, shadows dancing behind them. Jamie took a breath and began. Bloody Mary. Ava followed. Bloody Mary. Marcus grinned and shouted. Bloody Mary. Silence. Nothing happened. Marcus snorted. See, total BS. But then, a giggle. A soft, high-pitched, eerie giggle echoed around the room. It didn't sound like any of them. It didn't come from outside. It came from behind them, from the mirror. Liz screamed. Jamie spun around. Ava's candle flickered violently and went out. Marcus dropped his phone. Then they saw it. A face in the mirror, but not theirs. It was faint at first. A pale, grayish face appeared in the center of the mirror, eyes black, mouth torn open from ear to ear, like someone had carved a permanent scream into her. Blood smeared across her cheekbones like paint. Her hair floated as if underwater. She wasn't blinking. She wasn't moving. But her smile, that smile never changed. "Do not move," Ava whispered. Liz was crying, her back against the door. Marcus, stunned for the first time, whispered, "This isn't funny anymore." Then the mirror cracked, not from a rock or impact, it splintered on its own, as though something inside was trying to get out. And the giggle turned into laughter, not human laughter, broken, hollow, like a woman choking on blood while trying to sing. They ran, no one spoke a word until they were outside in the cold air again, gasping. "What the hell was that?" Marcus shouted. "You saw it, right?" Jamie said, pale. "Tell me I'm not crazy." "I told you not to do it," Liz sobbed. "I told you." Ava was silent. Her hands were shaking. She'd seen something more just for a second. Behind the face, like a dark figure standing deeper inside the glass. They promised never to talk about it again. They deleted the video. They even skipped school for a few days. But it wasn't over. 2 nights later, Liz called Ava at 3:12 a.m. Her voice was shaking. "She's here." Ava sat up in bed. "What?" I looked into my mirror. I didn't even say anything. I just looked, and she was there smiling. "Liz, calm down." I smashed the mirror, Ava. But she was still smiling, like she could still see me. Click. The call ended. Ava didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, Liz didn't show up at school. Her parents thought she ran away, but her bedroom window was locked from the inside. All they found was the broken mirror and a message scrawled on the wall in something red. 3 times is enough. But now she watches always. The others tried to go back to normal. Jamie tried to joke about it again, but the laughter never quite reached his eyes. Marcus stopped looking into any reflective surface. But Ava couldn't stop thinking about what she saw. Not the blood, not the smile, but the moment before the mirror cracked. A pair of hand-child eyes had pressed against the glass behind the woman's face. And a faint whisper, "Mommy, why did you leave me?" The cracked mirror, the distorted face. They thought it was over. After the terrifying night in the abandoned restroom. After Liz's disappearance. After that blood-red writing on the wall, Jamie, Ava, and Marcus swore to stay away from anything that even resembled a mirror. But evil doesn't stop when you ignore it. It waits, and it follows you home. It was the night after Liz vanished. Ava sat on the floor of her bedroom, phone in hand, replaying the voicemail Liz had left her earlier that night. The whisper of panic in her voice, the clatter of glass, and then that final sentence. She was still smiling. Ava didn't sleep that night. Every sound, creak of the walls, the rustle of wind outside made her skin crawl. By morning, she had covered every mirror in her house with old bed sheets. But for Jamie, things had already gone further. Jamie always said he loved horror, but something about what they'd done, something about seeing her in the mirror had changed him. He hadn't shown up to school since that night. His phone barely rang. Even his social media had gone silent. When Ava and Marcus visited his house that afternoon, his mom looked relieved to see them. "I'm glad you came," she said quietly. "He's not himself. He won't talk. Keeps the lights on all day. And broke his bathroom mirror last night. I found glass in his hands." The two exchanged a nervous glance. They found Jamie sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at his wall. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Jamie," Ava said gently, "you okay?" "She's in my room," he whispered. "What?" Marcus asked. "She wasn't in the bathroom this time. She was in the mirror across from my bed. She doesn't need the chanting anymore. She just comes when she wants." Ava's voice tightened. "What did you see?" Jamie swallowed. "Not just her. I saw myself. But it wasn't me. My face was wrong. Like someone had pulled it apart and tried to stitch it back together." He looked up, eyes hollow, and it smiled. It smiled like she did. Later that night, Ava couldn't stop thinking about it. She had locked her mirror in the closet, taped it shut, but the anxiety clawed at her from the inside out. She eventually drifted into sleep around 1 a.m. and woke up to a crack. It wasn't loud, but sharp like something breaking under pressure. Ava sat up and turned on her lamp. Her closet door was ajar. No, that couldn't be. She had taped it shut. Her heart thundered as she got out of bed, walking across the floor barefoot. The carpet felt damp, which didn't make sense. There had been no water spills, no leaks. She pulled the closet door open slowly. The mirror inside had cracked. Long, jagged fractures ran across the glass like a spider web. But what made her heart stop wasn't the crack itself. It was the reflection. She was standing there, her own face, but it wasn't hers. The eyes were too wide, too dark. The mouth was slightly parted in an unnatural grin, and one side of the face looked warped, stretched, as if melting. The reflection blinked, but Ava didn't. She screamed and stumbled back. When she looked again, the face was normal. The crack was still there, but the twisted reflection was gone. Her mom burst into the room seconds later. "Ava, what happened?" Ava couldn't answer. She didn't sleep again that night. At school the next day, students were whispering. Liz was still missing. Police had visited the campus. Some kids joked about her getting dragged into a mirror dimension. Others said she had simply run away. But a strange unease had settled over the halls. And then came the rumors. Other students unrelated to Ava's group started complaining about seeing strange things in mirrors. A girl in the freshman year cried during class because she claimed her reflection mouthed words she didn't say. A boy refused to enter the bathroom altogether, swearing he'd seen two of himself. It was spreading, and Ava knew why. That night, Marcus texted Ava. "Ava, look at this." He sent a photo of his mirror newly cracked. The pattern was identical to the one in her closet. "Ava, did you see her?" "Marcus, I didn't even go near it. I just woke up and it was like that. But there's more." "Marcus, I recorded my sleep. I've been paranoid. Set up my webcam. Watch this." He sent a short clip. Ava played it, her hands trembling. The footage showed Marcus sleeping, facing away from the camera. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the light in his room flickered once. And then, for a split second, the mirror reflected another figure. A woman, standing behind Marcus. Pale skin, sunken eyes, her mouth stretching open into a silent scream. Then the footage cut to black. Ava couldn't breathe. She had to do something, anything. She went back to the west wing of the school the next morning, snuck in before class started. Her footsteps echoed louder than she remembered. The restroom door was slightly open. The mirror was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer just cracked. It had shattered completely, leaving behind jagged, razor-sharp pieces still clinging to the frame. But one thing was clear. Every piece of broken glass reflected something different. One showed a hallway. One showed a dark forest. One showed Liz's face, silently crying. Ava stepped closer. Then she heard it again. That giggle. She turned and ran. When she returned to her locker, something was taped to it. A photo. It was a selfie she'd never taken. In the photo, she was standing in her bedroom, back facing the mirror, and behind her, a hand was pressed against the glass. But the hand wasn't hers. It was small, childlike, bloody. The following day, Jamie was gone. His mom found his room cold and empty, his bed unslept in, his window locked from the inside. Just like Liz's, the only clue left behind, his mirror, completely black, like ink had filled the glass from the inside out. Scrawled into the wood frame, using something that looked like dried blood, were 3 words. You looked back. By now, Ava was spiraling. Everything they'd done that night, it wasn't a game. It was an invitation. She visited the town library, desperate for anything about Bloody Mary or Mary Worth. What she found chilled her. A photograph from 1902. A small article in a dusty archive. It spoke of a woman accused of witchcraft, punished for dark mirror rituals, and said to have died calling for her child. Her name, Mary Worth. The final sentence of the article read, "Her body was never found, only the mirror remained, cracked and warm to the touch." That night, Ava stood in front of her covered mirror, hands trembling. She reached for the bedsheet and slowly pulled it down. Her face looked back at her. Normal. She leaned closer. Still normal. Then her reflection blinked out of sync and smiled. The scratches in the mirror that wouldn't fade. By now, Ava no longer wondered if something was haunting them. She knew it. She felt it in her bones. Liz was gone. Jamie was gone. Both had vanished without a trace, doors locked from the inside. Windows sealed shut, and mirrors, always a mirror left behind. Cracked, broken, or worse, intact, but watching. Marcus had stopped answering her calls 2 days ago. She thought maybe he was just scared. Maybe he wanted to forget. But deep down, Ava feared something far worse, that he was next, because the signs were no longer subtle. They were everywhere. It started with the bathroom mirror. Ava's mom had replaced the broken one in her room, but Ava refused to let anyone install a new one. She avoided glass, windows, even shiny surfaces. But the bathroom, she couldn't avoid that forever. On the 3rd night since Jamie disappeared, she walked in after brushing her teeth and stopped cold. The mirror above the sink was foggy, even though the room wasn't humid. They're clear as day, were 3 deep claw marks, as if something inside the glass had tried to tear its way out. She blinked. They didn't disappear. She reached out with a towel, trembling, wiped the surface. The claw marks stayed. Underneath them, in faint, rusty red smears, words began to emerge like something was writing from the other side. "I see you now." Ava stumbled back, knocking over a toothbrush holder. The sound echoed far louder than it should have in that tiny room. She ran, slammed the door, and sat with her back against it, heart pounding out of her chest. When her mom asked what happened, she lied, said she slipped, but her eyes stayed fixed on the hallway mirror behind her mom's shoulder, watching for even the slightest twitch in her own reflection. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she stared at her phone, waiting for a message, a sign, anything from Marcus. At 3:17 a.m., she got it. A photo, no caption, no name, just an image. It was a close-up of a bathroom mirror, this time covered in blood smears, not dripping, more like dragged across the glass by a hand. But it wasn't random. It formed a sentence. She belongs to the mirror now. Ava's throat tightened. She dialed Marcus immediately, no answer. She tried again, still nothing. Finally, on the 3rd try, someone picked up. But it wasn't Marcus. It was breathing, slow, shallow, and wrong. It wasn't quite human. Thin voice, female, soft, hollow, whispering directly into her ear. One by one until the mirror is full. Click. The call ended. Ava didn't go to school the next day. She stayed in, digging deeper into Mary Worth's history. Not the urban legend nonsense online, but actual, buried reports, old newspaper scans, library archives, church records. What she found made her stomach twist. Mary Worth hadn't just been an outcast accused of witchcraft. She had once been a healer, known for using mirrors in her strange remedies. Locals claimed she could see death coming by staring into reflections. But then the children in her village began to die, slowly, strangely. Each one claimed to see a woman in their mirrors days before their death. The town turned on her. They stormed her cabin, destroyed everything, and burned her alive, so they thought, because the mirror they found in her home refused to break. It reflected fire, but never cracked, and the villagers said they could still hear her screams coming from inside the glass. That night, Ava took down the sheets covering her mirror. She had to face it. She needed answers. She sat in front of it, candlelight flickering. At first just her reflection, pale, tired, but normal. Then, as if the glass breathed, moisture formed on its surface. Slowly, letters appeared. "Why did you call me?" Ava's voice shook. "I didn't want this. We didn't know." More letters, written as if by a finger on foggy glass. "You called me 3 times. You looked. Now you belong." Then, without warning, deep scratches tore across the mirror, as if invisible nails were carving through it from inside. Ava screamed. The reflection changed. It was no longer her. The figure in the glass had black eyes, a mouth stretched wide and broken, and blood dripping from the sides of its face like tears. But the most horrifying thing? It started mimicking Ava's movements, only 1 second too late. Like it was watching, studying, learning. Ava stumbled back, slamming the bedsheet over the mirror. But from behind the fabric, she heard it. A slow, dragging sound. Clawing. From inside the glass. The next day, the mirror was cracked again. This time, Ava didn't touch it. She walked into school with her head low. Barely anyone looked at her. Rumors were swirling now about Marcus, who hadn't shown up in 2 days. Another student had reportedly gone missing. A sophomore. Disappeared after a party. The only thing found in his room, a shattered mirror. But it wasn't the police Ava cared about. It was the drawings. Someone had taped hand-drawn sketches all over the school bathroom stalls. Each one showed the same figure. A woman with long, black hair covering half her face, torn lips, hollow eyes, and the same sentence scribbled underneath every one. "She's watching through the glass." Ava's final straw came that night. She heard it before she saw it. Scraping. Coming from the living room mirror. She tiptoed down, heart hammering. The mirror above the fireplace was dark, but something was moving behind the glass. Not in the reflection, behind it. She watched, horrified, as words began to scrape their way across the inside. "Help me." Then another. "Trapped." And finally, "Let me out." Ava whispered, "Liz." The face that appeared in the mirror wasn't Mary. It was Liz. Tears running down her cheeks. Mouth moving, but no sound came through. Just her hands, pounding against the inside of the glass. Then, in one horrifying blink, she was pulled away by something unseen. Her face disappeared into the darkness, and Bloody Mary replaced it, grinning. Her nails dragged one final message into the mirror. "You're next." Ava collapsed to the floor, sobbing. She finally understood. Mary wasn't haunting them for fun. She was collecting, one by one, through reflections. Every time they looked at Evan, just glance at, they gave her power. Every mirror was a window, every eye contact, an invitation. And now, Ava had looked too many times. The claw marks wouldn't fade. The messages wouldn't stop. And the face in the mirror wasn't her own anymore. She doesn't disappear when the lights are on. Since the terrifying scratches and haunting messages appeared on the mirrors, Ava felt like she was living in a nightmare that wouldn't end. Every mirror she passed seemed to watch her back, every reflection carrying an echo of something dark and wrong. But the worst part was yet to come. Marcus, who had once been the loudest and most fearless of the group, began to change. At first, It was small things: stopped texting back, missed school, and looked exhausted when they did catch him online. One evening, Ava received a message from him. "Marcus, Ava, I need to tell you something. Something's wrong." "Ava, what is it?" "Marcus, I'm not alone. Even when the lights are on, I see her. Always." The text ended there. Ava's heart pounded. She called Marcus, but he didn't pick up. The next morning, she found a note slipped under her door. In Marcus's shaky handwriting it read, "She's here, Ava, even in daylight. Even when I turn every light on, she's there. Watching. Waiting." Determined to help, Ava went to Marcus's house that afternoon. When she arrived, the porch light was flickering erratically. Inside, Marcus sat curled up in a corner of his living room, the curtains pulled tight, every lamp switched on, but his eyes were hollow. "I see her," Marcus whispered, voice trembling. "Not just at night anymore. I see her in the bathroom, in the hallway mirror, even in the window reflections." Ava shivered. "What does she want?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know, but she's angry, and she's getting closer." That night, Marcus recorded a video diary. On camera, his voice shook as he explained how the apparition of Bloody Mary had begun to haunt him relentless. "Lying not just in darkness, but all the time. I tried everything," he said, "turning on lights, covering mirrors, even leaving the house. But I see her, behind me, in the corner of my eye." He glanced off camera and screamed. A pale figure emerged slowly from the shadows, a woman with torn, bloody lips and hollow, black eyes. She reached out, fingers clawing through the air, her face twisted in a permanent, sinister grin. The video cut to static. Meanwhile, Ava's world was crumbling. She barely slept. Every mirror in her home was covered, every window blocked. She avoided going outside, afraid she would catch a glimpse of the curse waiting to trap her. At school, rumors swirled. More students were disappearing. Mirrors in bathrooms, bedrooms, even store windows cracked spontaneously. And sometimes, the faint sound of sinister giggling echoed down empty hallways. One evening, Ava's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "She's not gone when the lights come on. She's always here, waiting for you." Ava froze. The following day, she confronted her remaining friends at school. "We have to end this," she said, her voice steady but eyes wild. "We need to find out more about Mary Worth, why she's angry, and how to stop her." Together, they dug deeper. At the local library, they uncovered old town records, forgotten diaries, and faded photographs. They pieced together the tragic story of Mary Worthance, a loving mother falsely accused of witchcraft, betrayed by her own child, and cursed to haunt the mirrors of anyone who dared to call her name. But the more they learned, the more dangerous things became. Marcus's condition worsened. He told Ava he could feel Mary's presence beside him, even when surrounded by friends. One night, he confessed through tears. "She told me I'm the next to join her in the mirror." Ava realized the curse wasn't just about fear. It was about possession. Mary was collecting souls, strapping them behind glass forever, and no light could save those who were chosen. Desperate, Ava searched for rituals, old spells, anything to free her friends and herself. But every attempt backfired. Mirrors shattered, voices screamed louder, and the presence grew stronger. Then one night, Ava woke up to a whisper. "You called me, Ava. Now you belong." She saw her reflection smile back at her, eyes black as night. And in that moment, she understood. The curse was far from over. The legend of Mary Worth, the cursed mother. The story of Mary Worth was never just a ghost tale whispered in dark corners. It was a tragedy rooted in fear, betrayal, and a curse that had lasted centuries passed down in hushed tones from generation to generation. To understand why Mary haunted mirrors and why her name brought terror, Ava and her friends had to travel deep into the past. The village where Mary Worth lived was a small settlement surrounded by thick forests and misty hills. No one remembered the exact year, but the town records dated back to the early 1700s. Mary was a healer, a woman known for her knowledge of herbs, potions, and rituals. She wasn't just a simple midwife or herbalist. Mary was rumored to have an uncanny connection to the spiritual world. She had a son, Thomas, a boy quiet and withdrawn, often sickly, and dependent on his mother's care. Mary's reputation was a double-edged sword. While some villagers sought her help and trusted her remedies, others whispered about dark magic. Fear turned to suspicion. One winter, a sickness swept through the village. Children fell ill, some dying under mysterious circumstances. The villagers looked for someone to blame. Mary's connection to the spiritual world made her the perfect scapegoat. Whispers grew into accusations. Thomas, under pressure and fear, claimed his mother was a witch. He said she had cursed the village and that her healing was nothing but dark sorcery. His words shattered the fragile peace. The villagers gathered in the town square under a cold moon. Mary was dragged from her home, bound in chains. She pleaded her innocence, shouting that she was a mother who only wanted to save her son and others. But the villagers' fear was deafening. They took her to the forest clearing where an old oak tree stood. There, they built a pyre. Mary's screams pierced the night as the flames consumed her. But as the fire burned, something strange happened. Her body disappeared. Only her mirror, an ornate piece with carvings of twisted vines and ice, was left untouched by the fire. The villagers believed the mirror held her soul, and they buried it deep beneath the oak tree, hoping to trap her forever. But the curse had begun. The villagers who burned Mary began to die in strange ways. Some saw a woman with a distorted face watching them through mirrors. Others reported hearing whispers and laughter that echoed even in the brightest rooms. It was said that Mary's son, Thomas, had been cursed too. He disappeared the same night, never seen again. Theories spread that Mary's spirit was angry not just at the villagers, but at her own child for betrayal. Over time, Mary's legend grew. Parents warned children never to say her name 3 times in front of a mirror. They told stories of her appearance a woman, with bloodied lips torn from ear to ear, eyes black as coal, and a face frozen in a terrifying smile. The curse didn't just trap souls, it fed on fear, growing stronger with every whispered name. Those who dared summon Mary risked becoming part of her collection, trapped behind the glass. Forever watching, forever waiting. Ava's research uncovered an old diary found buried near the oak tree. The pages were brittle, but the words were clear. Mary had written about a ritual, a way to communicate through mirrors to protect her son from an evil force that she feared was coming. But the villagers misunderstood her actions. They thought her magic was malevolent when it was a desperate attempt to save her child. The final entry chilled Ava to the bone. If I am taken, my soul will live in the reflection. If my son betrays me, the curse will be eternal. Those who call my name will summon me. But bewareth mirror is a prison as well as a gateway. Ava closed the diary, her mind racing. Mary was more than a vengeful spirit. She was a mother betrayed and trapped between world-sure pain and anger twisted into a curse. With this knowledge came new hope and new fear. Could they break the curse? Or was calling her name an irrevocable mistake? The past was never truly past. Mary Worth's spirit lingered, watching, waiting, her story far from over. Saying her name 3 times, the summoning of blood. The group didn't sleep much after that night. After what happened to Minna, her seeing Bloody Mary even with the lights on, it became clear that the game they thought was just a playground dare was far more real than they'd ever imagined. Minna sat in silence during their next meeting. Her eyes looked tired, dark circles under them, as if she hadn't slept in days. She didn't say much. Occasionally, she would flinch at shadows or turn to look over her shoulder, though no one was there. It was Liam who broke the silence. "We need to record it." "Record what?" asked Jenna, nervously twisting her bracelet. "The ritual," he said, leaning forward. "We try the Bloody Mary ritual again, but this time with cameras and audio. We need proof. And maybe, just maybe, we'll catch something we can analyze, a thing that explains what's happening to Minna." Everyone hesitated. Minna didn't object, which surprised them. She just nodded slightly. "Okay," said Sam, reluctant. "But we only do it once. No more games after that." They agreed. The plan was simple. They would set up a camera and audio recorder in the bathroom, perform the ritual as before, 3 chants of Bloody Mary in front of the mirror, and leave the room empty. That way, no one would be at risk. On the night of the recording, tension filled the air. The bathroom was cramped, with a large rectangular mirror above the sink and a single flickering bulb, casting a yellowish glow. Liam carefully positioned a small digital camera facing the mirror, then placed an audio recorder on the edge of the sink. "I'll say the words," he volunteered. "Then I'll step out, and we'll leave the equipment running for 5 minutes. Jenna looked unsure. "You sure about this? No one's staying inside." Liam reminded her. "That's the deal." He took a breath, stood in front of the mirror, and said it clearly. "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." He paused, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. The mirror only reflected his face and the pale bathroom wall behind him. "Done," he said quickly, then turned and walked out. The group closed the bathroom door and waited in the hallway. 5 minutes felt like hours. When they finally re-entered the room, everything was in place. The light was still on. No sign of blood, scratches, or figures in the mirror. They collected the equipment and gathered in the living room to check the results. Liam plugged the audio recorder into his laptop. He played the file, fast-forwarding through the first few seconds of silence. Then they heard it. It began as a faint rustling, like cloth brushing against the microphone, then scratching. It wasn't coming from the room. It was from inside the microphone, raw, desperate, and unnatural. Nails on glass, nails on skin. Jenna covered her mouth. Then came the sound that made them all freeze, crying. A woman's sobs, muffled at first, then rising in intensity. It wasn't just weeping, it was grief. Pain. It sounded ancient, like someone had been crying for centuries. "She's crying," Minna whispered. "Why is she crying?" Suddenly, on the audio, there was a sharp metallic clink, as if something tapped the recorder. And then a whisper, soft, raspy. "Come back." The room was silent. No one moved. The crying faded, and so did the scratching. "Is that it?" Sam asked in a hushed voice. Liam replayed it. Same sounds, same crying, same whisper at the end. They turned to the camera footage. The video showed Liam performing the ritual, then leaving. The mirror reflected nothing but the empty room. For the first 2 minutes, nothing changed. Then, the mirror began to blur at the glass, but the reflection itself, it looked like fog slowly blooming across the surface, though the actual glass remained clear. Then came the distortion. The reflection twisted slightly, as if the camera were filming through rippling water. At minute 4, a shape began to form in the mirror. A face, pale, hollow-eyed, lips cracked and bleeding. The figure wasn't in the room, it existed only in the mirror, and her eyes were open wide, staring straight into the camera. The moment her mouth moved, Silently heard the whisper on the audio. "Come back." The screen turned black. The camera shut off by itself. They sat in silence. "That wasn't a glitch," Liam said, voice shaking. "That wasn't a trick." Jenna was trembling. "We caught her." "No," Minna said quietly. "She wanted us to. She wants us to know she's real." They didn't know what to do with the footage. Uploading it felt wrong, dangerous even. But what haunted them more than the audio or the video was what happened afterward. That night, Sam woke up to find his bathroom mirror had cracked in the middle. A jagged line ran through it as if something had struck it from the inside. Jenna reported hearing whispers from her closet, though no one was there. Liam found his laptop playing the audio file by itself, looping endlessly, even after he deleted it. But the worst happened to Minna. She called them in a panic 3 days later. "She's angry," she said through sobs. "You called her. You brought her here. She's not just in the mirror anymore, she's everywhere." They rushed to her apartment. She looked pale, gaunt. Her apartment smelled like burned hair and old metal. "She doesn't want to go back," Minna said, trembling. "She wants to stay. She wants to live again." Jenna whispered, "What if we summoned her?" Liam's hands trembled. "Then we need to unsummon her, whatever that means." But no one knew how. Bloody Mary Worth, or whoever she really was, had crossed over. They thought they were playing a game, a dare, a ritual they could stop anytime. But they had awakened something far older than they understood. And now she was no longer waiting behind the mirror. She was already here, the fifth one who never woke up. The room was dead silent. Only the sound of the broken ceiling fan slowly creaking above them filled the air. The light bulb flickered twice and went out. The 4 remaining friends, Noah, Sarah, Liam, and Ava, stood frozen, huddled in the doorway of room 3C. The air inside was unnaturally cold, and the stench of iron, thick, metallic, lingered like a warning. Where Ethan had once slept, there was now just an empty, blood-soaked mattress, and on the tiled floor, the shattered remains of the old mirror they'd used for the Bloody Mary ritual. And in the center of that broken glass, a single handprint, smeared in what looked like blood, dragging down into nothing. No screams, no struggle, no signs of forced entry. Ethan was gone, vanished. Liam stepped closer, swallowing hard. This can't be real, right? Maybe he went out, sleepwalking, something like that. Sarah, trembling, pointed toward the window. "It's still locked from the inside, and the door was bolted until we opened it just now. There's no way out." Ava, always the skeptic, was now visibly shaken. "And what about the voice on the recording? The scratching, the crying? We heard it again last night." They all remembered it clearly, sometime around 3:17 a.m. The recorder left on Ethan's desk picked up what sounded like nails dragging across wood. Then faint whispering, then, unmistakably, the guttural sobbing of a woman. That was the last noise before the static took over completely. And then silence. Now, as the morning sun weakly pushed through the curtains, the horror settled in. Ethan wasn't just missing. Something had taken him. And whatever it was still here. Later that day, a local officer arrived, called in by the group under the guise of a missing person. Of course, they couldn't mention ghosts or rituals without sounding insane. But when the officer entered room 3C, even he seemed disturbed. "I've seen blood," he muttered, inspecting the stained floor. "But it's fresh. Yet there's no source, and no body, no drag marks. Like he just evaporated." He found the broken mirror and paused. "What's this symbol?" The group leaned in. Beneath the blood smear, etched into the dusty surface of the wall, was something they hadn't noticed before. A rough symbol, an open eye with a single teardrop drawn in what looked like dried black soot. Ava gasped. That symbol, it was in the legend. In one of the old newspaper clippings. The curse mark left behind after Mary Worth was burned. It was true. When Mary Worth was accused of witchcraft and executed, legends say that townspeople found that exact symbol drawn on the barn walls in ashes. Some said it was her final act of vengeance. Others believed it marked those who would be cursed forever. Suddenly, the officer's radio crackled violently, and the lights in the room flickered again. "All right," he said, stepping back. "Something's off here. But unless you find a body or a real lead, there's nothing more I can do. I'll file the report, but off the record. You kids should leave this place." But they didn't leave, because deep down, they all knew it wasn't over yet. That night, none of them could sleep. They camped out in the common area of the rental house, afraid to return to their individual rooms. Each of them was haunted by memories of what they saw in the mirror during the ritual. Bloody Mary, her twisted face, her rotted lips whispering their names one by one. And now one name had been taken. Athens. The group made a pact. They'd go back to room 3C together at midnight. They would confront whatever was hiding behind that mirror. 11:59 p.m. The air was thick and unmoving. Time crawled. As the clock struck midnight, they entered the room, again flashlights in hand, recorder turned on, cameras rolling. The mirror shards had been cleaned up by the officer, but the wall remained stained and cold. Noah took the lead. "We call her again," he said through clenched teeth. "But this time, we ask her what she wants." Ava glared. "You're insane. She already took Ethan." Sarah whispered, "Maybe that's why we have to finish it. Maybe it's like a deal. She only leaves if we give her what she wants." Liam added, "What if it's not about the name? What if it's about guilt? About remembering her?" Reluctantly, they agreed. One by one, they stood before the wall. Candles lit. Mirror fragments placed in a circle. They repeated the name. "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." Then silence. At first, nothing. And then, thud. A knock. From inside the wall. Sarah gasped. "Did you hear that?" They backed away as the knock came again, thud in a rhythmic, slow cadence. Noah dropped the camera. The wall cracked. Hairline fractures spread across the surface like veins, and from within the cracks oozed something dark, thick like blackened blood. A voice emerged, not from the air but from inside their heads. A voice like burning smoke. "You called me, but forgot why." Ava clutched her head and fell to her knees. "She's in my mind, she's in my..." One by one forgotten mothers shall rise. I was the first, but not the last. The candle flames turned blue. The temperature dropped below freezing. The group screamed as shadows emerged from the mirror shards. On the floor, distorted reflections of themselves, each with hollow eyes and blood running from their mouths. The spirits circled them, whispering, "Wake him if you dare." Noah turned to the others. "She's not finished. Ethan's not dead. She's keeping him. Somewhere between." Sarah, crying, whispered, "Then we have to go in." Liam stared at her. "Go in where?" She pointed at the mirror pieces, wherever she took him. Desperation led to madness. Noah, trembling, reached into the largest shard of mirror, and it swallowed his hand. The group screamed as his arm sank into the surface like water. Noah cried out, "It's cold, it's freezing, but it's not glass, it's pulling." They had no time to debate. One by one, they made a choice no sane person would. They stepped through the fractured mirror, into the place where Ethan had been taken. It wasn't darkness, it was reflection. They found themselves in a twisted version of room 3-6, except everything was backwards. The walls bled black, the windows were bricked shut, The light bulbs hung upside down, flickering blue, and in the corner Ethan, eyes wide open, but unmoving, frozen in place, mouth stretched open in a silent scream. Sarah rushed to him, shaking him. "Ethan, it's us, we're here." But as soon as she touched him, he crumbled. His body turned to ash in her hands, and behind them, the voice returned. "One must stay to keep the balance." They turned. Mary Worth stood at the far wall, a woman of agony. Her body was stitched together, burned and scarred. Her face was half melted, her mouth stretching too far across her cheeks. Her eyes bled tears that turned to steam as they hit the ground. She whispered, "He called me first. He must remain." Noah stepped forward. "Then take me. Let him go." But she shook her head. "Too late. The price is paid." Ava screamed, "Then why are we here? What do you want?" Mary's voice grew distant. "Remember the forgotten. Speak for the silent, or you will all become me." With that, the mirror began to crack again. The group fled back the way they came, leaping through the reflective surface as the world behind them collapsed. They landed on the wooden floor of room 3C, gasping, crying, ash-covered. Ethan was gone, forever. But now they knew. It was never just a game. It was a warning, and the curse of Mary Worth was just beginning to awaken again. Deaths in the mirror are not the same outside. People say that mirrors reflect truth, but what if they reflect something more? Something darker. Something meant to stay hidden. After Dan's disappearance, the group was no longer the same. No one could sleep. The gory sight of shattered glass and blood stains haunted their minds like a stain. They couldn't scrub clean. The police had been called, of course. They found no sign of forced entry, no fingerprints except those of Dan and his friends, and no explanation for the vanishing. One officer had whispered, half-jokingly, maybe Bloody Mary got him. No one laughed. Since that night, none of them dared say the name aloud again. Not 3 times, not even once. But the curse had already been set in motion. The first death, Olivia's cousin. A week after Dan's disappearance, Olivia received a devastating phone call. Her cousin Lena, just 16, had been found dead in her bedroom. The cause, unclear. But what stunned everyone wasn't just the timing, it was how the body was found. Lena's face was gone. Her eyes, nose, and mouth had all vanished, as if someone had erased her features like pencil on paper. Her skin was perfectly smooth, stretched over her skull like porcelain. There was no sign of trauma, no wound, no blood, just emptiness where a face should be. But even more terrifying, according to her younger brother, Lena had been joking about Bloody Mary 2 nights before. She'd laughed and said, "Watch me do it and not die." Apparently, she had. She stood before her mirror and whispered the name 3 times. The brother said she giggled afterward. Nothing happened, or at least not right away. Olivia didn't believe in coincidences anymore. The patterns begin. As news of Lena's bizarre death spread through town, the story evolved from a strange tragedy to a whispered warning. Teens began deleting mirror challenge videos from their phones. Some even covered the mirrors in their rooms with bed sheets. But fear had a strange way of spreading like a virus that infected the curious. The second death came only 5 days later. His name was Jordan, a sophomore from the nearby high school. He had posted a TikTok where he dared Bloody Mary to come for him. The video was taken down hours later, but not before it was shared hundreds of times. Jordan was found in his bathroom. Not only had his mirror shattered inward as if something came out of it, but his reflection was still imprinted on the remaining shards. Not his current self, but his screaming face at the moment of death. He too had no face. Literally, just smooth skin and frozen fingers clutching a broken piece of glass. The mirror and the markings. It was Chloe who noticed it first. All the victims had one thing in common besides the missing faces. Somewhere in their rooms hidden, smeared in blood or dust, was a symbol. 3 intersecting lines that formed a twisted version of the letter M. It wasn't graffiti. It wasn't written by the victims themselves. In Lena's room, it was behind her mirror. In Jordan's, it was inside his medicine cabinet. But the most horrifying discovery was in their own apartment. Olivia found the same symbol etched faintly into the inside of the bathroom mirror, right where Dan had done the ritual. She screamed so loud it brought everyone running. Tyler tried to scrub it off with alcohol. It didn't come off. Not even a scratch. They took the mirror down, wrapped it in an old blanket, and threw it into the dumpster that night. But by morning, it was back, hung exactly where it had always been, untouched. The reflections lie. The following days turned into a waking nightmare. One evening, Chloe came out of the shower and nearly fainted. In the mirror's fogged surface, she saw her reflection standing completely still, but she had already stepped away from the sink. The reflection wasn't copying her. It smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched afar. She screamed and smashed the mirror with a shampoo bottle. But again, the next morning it returned. Not a single crack. From that moment on, none of them looked directly into mirrors. They brushed their teeth with their eyes closed. They covered every reflective surface they could. But mirrors, they soon realized, are not just in bathrooms. They're in windows at night, in dark TV screens, in puddles, even in someone else's eyes. And the reflections were getting bolder. The faceless video. Tyler became obsessed. He believed there had to be a pattern, a rule, something they could use to break the curse. He set up his camera at 3 a.m., facing the mirror, hoping to record what might appear when no one was watching. What he captured made them all feel sick. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the mirror began to ripple, as if the surface was made of water. From the shadows emerged a pale woman. Her face was scarred and stretched, lips slashed from ear to ear, eyes wide with grief and fury. She didn't step out of the mirror. She crawled, bent backwards, her limbs cracking with every movement. Then, the camera cut to static. But when the screen returned just for a second, the recording showed Tyler lying on the floor, with no face. They panicked, checked on him immediately. He was fine, breathing, awake. But when they played the video again, it was just blank. Nothing but 2 hours of quiet. They never spoke of it again. What is she really? They searched everything they could about Bloody Mary, urban legends, historical records, old newspaper clippings, even obscure forums from the early days of the internet. One theory stuck out, disturbing in its detail. An English woman in the 18th century named Mary Worth had been accused of witchcraft and mutilating children. She was burned alive, but before she died, she swore, "Those who mock me shall wear my pain. I will take their faces so they may scream as I did, voiceless in the fire." Her face, legend said, was so disfigured during the trial that mirrors refused to reflect her true form. So she cursed them. Every mirror became a doorway, every whisper of her name a signal flare. And when said 3 times, it was like tearing open a veil between worlds. Nowhere is safe. The town was changing. More deaths were reported. Quiet, hush-hush cases that never made the news in full. But whispers spread. People knew. And the faceless bodies kept appearing. Hospitals refused to release details. Police denied any connection. But one janitor at the morgue anonymously told a podcaster, "They're not normal deaths. Some of the bodies still move. They twitch, and their reflections don't match." The final warning. One night, Olivia's phone buzzed. It was a video message. No sender, no return number. The screen lit up showing the apartment's bathroom, their mirror. Except this time it was Dan. Faceless, standing, silent. Behind him, the woman was crawling out of the mirror. The video ended with a single message. You're next, don't look. Don't speak. And whatever you do, don't say her name. The forgotten town where Mary was burned alive. There was something unnerving about the road leading to the forgotten town. No street signs. No name on the map. Just a dirt path that clawed its way through overgrown fields and vanished into a shroud of dead trees. The sky above had grown inexplicably gray as the group drove deeper in. Even though the weather forecast predicted clear blue skies, men sat in the back seat, flipping through the wrinkled photo of the old well they had found in the Archiveson that supposedly sat in the center of the town that no longer existed. Lynn, driving, kept glancing at the GPS that had gone completely haywire ever since they passed the iron bridge. Next to her, Di stared blankly out the window, visibly pale. "This is it," Lynn said, voice dry. "There's no further road. We'll have to walk." The group stepped out, greeted by the scent of scorched wood and something far older decay buried deep within the soil. No one had spoken since they passed the second dead crow by the roadside. Something about this place sucked the words right out of their lungs. They walked in silence, the air still and pressing. After 20 minutes, the woods opened up and there it was. The forgotten town, a scattering of blackened ruins. Rotten wooden beams stuck out of collapsed houses like broken ribs. Ivy had taken over what remained of the chapel, and in the very center of town was the charred stump of what used to be a massive stake surrounded by ash-filled earth. Men stared at it in a daze. "This must be where they burned her," he whispered. Di knelt, brushing away the ash until his fingers touched something brittle and yelped and jerked back. A blackened bone, snapped clean. Lynn stared at it, then at the surrounding ground. "They didn't just burn her. They left her here," she said, unburied. Suddenly, Fuck, who had walked off to explore a half-collapsed building, called out, "Guys, over here." They followed the voice to what remained of an old schoolhouse. Its roof had caved in, but there was one small closet still intact behind the blackboard. Inside was an old, half-burned chest. When Lynn forced it open, the lid gave a sharp crack, and inside, wrapped in cloth and stained with age, was a journal. The pages were warped, ink smudged, but much of it was still readable. The first page read, "Mary's journal. If I am ever found, let this speak the truth they buried with fire." The entries told a story far different from the town legend. Mary had been a midwife, a healer. People brought her their sick, their wounded, and their dying. She used herbs, poultices, and whispered prayers passed down from her grandmother. But when a child died during birth, the town turned. They called her a witch, accused her of sacrificing the baby. They said she cursed the crops, that her mirror of black glass heirloom was the source of her evil. She begged, cried, screamed, but they tied her to the stake and set her ablaze. The final entry was scrawled and uneven, as if written in panic. "They took the mirror, they buried it under the old well, but I left a piece with me, in my blood. In my vow, I will return through the glass, and they all of them will burn like I did." Silence fell over the group. Lynn looked up, her face pale. "The mirror, that's why all of this started." Di spoke, voice trembling. "We have to find the well." They searched what remained of the town, following the layout drawn in the journal. Eventually, behind the chapel's ruins, they found it. A round stone structure, covered in moss and barely standing. The well. They stared into it, Empty. Too empty. Min threw a stone down, expecting the plop of water. Nothing. Only the sound of the stone hitting something solid metallic, maybe. I'm going down, Fuck said, gripping the rope. Lin grabbed his arm. Don't be stupid. But he had already slid down into the darkness. Minutes passed, then a scream. Not human. A high-pitched, reverberating sound that made the air itself tremble. Then silence. Fuck. Nothing. Dai and Min peered down, shining their flashlight into the depths, but there was no sign of him. The rope had been cut. Lin dropped to her knees, whispering, "We should never have come here." Just then, a cold wind blew through the ruin sand from the ash around the stake. Something moved. A whisper, not heard, but felt. Mary. The journal pages fluttered in Lin's hand before flying into the air, landing around them in a perfect circle. Then, from the center of that circle, the ash rose, and they saw her, or what was left. Blackened skin, her jaw stretched unnaturally wide, and empty eye sockets that bled shadows. Mary's ghost hovered above the earth, still tethered by invisible flames. "You returned," she hissed, but her mouth did not move. "And now you must choose." The group froze, heartbeats pounding. Return the mirror, or join the others. Men swallowed hard. "We don't know where it is. We only read your journal." The wind screamed louder. Mary's ghost moved closer, her shape flickering like firelight. "One of you carries the blood. One of you is mine." Then she vanished. The sky above turned pitch black, and suddenly, the well erupted vomiting black smoke and a deafening sound like glass shattering in slow motion. The air grew thick, and from the well, something emerged. A mirror, not ordinary glass, black as obsidian, its surface rippled like liquid. Something inside it pressed against the surface face, screaming, "Trapped." Fuck. Lin dropped to her knees. "She's pulling them in, through the mirrors. That's why they're the bodies we found were faceless. They weren't just killed. They were erased." Dai staggered back. "We have to destroy it." Min held up the journal. "No, if we break the mirror, we release her completely. That's what the vow meant. She left part of herself inside it. That's the seal." Suddenly, Dai began to convulse. He dropped to the ground, clawing at his face, shrieking. Blood poured from his mouth, his nose, and then he went still, dead. But his face, gone. Just skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Smooth like wax. Lin screamed. Min pulled her back. "We need to bury the mirror. Seal it again, just like they did." The two ran to the edge of the forest, digging frantically with their bare hands, ignoring the cries and whispers in the wind. Finally, they lowered the mirror into the earth, wrapping it in the burned pages of Mary's journal, and covered it with salt, ash, and stones. The air shifted. The screaming stopped. The wind died, and silence fell once more. When they looked up, the ruins of the town seemed older, more decayed. As if decades had passed in minutes, the stake was now dust. The well collapsed into itself. Mary was gone. They left the town without looking back. 2 years later, a quiet museum in a nearby city displayed a new artifact in a sealed case. The curator, a collector of local lore, had discovered something buried deep in a forest near an old ruin. A black mirror. No one noticed, at first, that the reflection in the glass didn't always match what was in front of it, or that sometimes it smiled back. The other side of the mirror is a different world. There are stories so unsettling that even whispering them aloud seems to invite something dark into the room. This one is about a girl who disappeared into a mirror and came back to tell what she saw. Her name was Lin. She was part of the same group of students investigating the legend of Bloody Mary, ever since they uncovered that tattered journal in the forgotten village one that spoke of Mary's blood oath. Strange things began happening. People went missing. Reflections moved when no one did. And one night Lynn vanished. It started with a whisper. Lynn was alone in her dorm room, scrolling through the blurry photos they'd taken in the abandoned village. She paused at a shot of the charred tree stump in the town square where Mary was believed to have been burned alive. The bark almost resembled a screaming face. Lynn stared too long, and in the silence, she heard it. A faint whisper. It didn't come from her phone. It came from her mirror. Lynn. She froze. The sound wasn't external. It was inside her ears, like it had bypassed the air around her. Slowly, she turned to look at the mirror above her desk. At first, it was just her reflection. Then it blinked, but Lynn hadn't. She gasped and stumbled backward, knocking over her chair. Her reflection stayed still, eyes wide, unblinking, and then it smiled. Lynn wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The mirror started to ripple, like water disturbed by a drop. Her reflection moved without her stretching a hand forward, as if trying to reach through. Then the hand came out. It wasn't made of flesh. It looked like cracked porcelain, its surface etched with fine lines like shattered glass. Cold fingers wrapped around Lynn's wrist and pulled her forward. She struggled, cried, dug her heels into the ground, but her body began sliding across the floor, into the mirror, and just like Thatch was gone, no one knew what had happened. When her roommate returned, all she found was Lynn's phone still open on the desk, and the mirror shattered into a spiderweb of cracks, but intact. Lynn's reflection was no longer there. 2 days passed. Then, in the middle of the night, Lynn reappeared. Or rather, her body did. She was found curled up in the corner of the dorm hallway, eyes bloodshot, fingernails cracked and bleeding. She kept whispering the same sentence over and over again. Don't trust the mirrors. They lie. They lie. They lie. Once she calmed down, she began to speak, and what she described chilled everyone to the bone. It was like falling through ice, she said. Cold, but not physical. My body didn't hurt, but my mind did. I woke up in a world that looked like ours, but twisted. All the buildings were cracked, broken like time had frozen them mid-collapse. The sky was gray and cloudy, just empty, and the mirrors were everywhere. They floated in the air, some hung like paintings, some stretched across the ground like black water, but none showed my reflection. They showed other things, people I didn't recognize, crying, children screaming behind the glass. Sometimes I saw versions of myself, dying in different ways. One was burning, one was drowned, one had no face. Lynn paused, trembling. There were shadows there. I couldn't see their faces. They watched me, followed me. I think they were reflection-strapped, echoing pain again and again. I don't know how long I was in there. Time didn't move right. I felt like I was walking forever. And then I heard her. Mary. The room went cold as Lynn said that name. She didn't look like a ghost. She looked human. A woman in rags, skin burned in patches. But her eyes, oh God, they were hollow, no soul behind them. She said I shouldn't have looked for her. That now I was part of the story. That every mirror was a door. And once I knew they'd never be safe again. She broke down after that, refused to speak of it further. But one detail haunted her friends the most. Mary said the mirrors remember. Every time someone says her name near a mirror, it becomes a little more alive, a little more awake. And once it's awake, it hungers. Lynn wouldn't sleep with mirrors anymore. She covered them all, even the camera on her phone. She dropped out of school 2 weeks later. But it didn't end there. A boy named Tongue, skeptical of the whole story, decided to test it. He turned on his live stream late one night and said Mary's name into the camera 3 times. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Nothing happened at first, but within minutes, his viewers began commenting. Who's the woman behind you? Did you just smile? Wait, is your mirror moving? The last image on the stream was of Tongue turning toward the mirror in his room and his face changing, stretching, smiling to wide, then static. Tongue was never seen again. Only one person claimed to have seen him afterward, a janitor who said he caught a glimpse of someone in the school's bathroom mirror. The face was distorted, the mouth wide open as if screaming silently, but the body didn't move. When police checked the bathroom, there was nothing there, except for the word liar written backward in the mirror. The legend grew. People began covering mirrors across campus. Some were too late. Their reflections began acting differently. A girl said her reflection whispered secrets about her future. A boy claimed his reflection started aging, showing him withered and old. One teacher smashed every mirror in his home meth and jumped out the window the next day, screaming that he could still see her. And then the mirrors started breaking on their own. Cracks would appear overnight. Glass would spiderweb like it had been struck though no one had touched it. Some mirrors leaked a thick, black liquid from the cracks, as if bleeding. One janitor who tried to clean it up went blind the next morning. His eyes were milky white, and he muttered, "Too many faces, they were screaming." By now, the university had become infamous. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and reporters swarmed the campus. Many left frightened. Some didn't leave at all. And Lynn, she disappeared again. This time, for good. The last thing anyone saw was the security camera footage from the library's basement level. Lynn was walking down a corridor, her arms full of books about spiritual mirrors and scrying practices. As she passed a long wall lined with display glass, her reflection stopped walking. Lynn didn't notice. She kept walking forward, but the reflection turned and smiled. Then the mirror shattered. When security arrived, there was no sign of Lynn, only her books, and a single message written in blood across the broken shards. The mirror world is hungry. Since then, the legend has evolved. People now say there's another world just beyond the surface of every mirror world built from pain, echoes, and lost souls. A world where Mary waits, feeding off fear, luring in anyone foolish enough to say her name. The more people believe, the more powerful she becomes. And every mirror is a window into that world. Some are just more open than others. So the next time you look into a mirror, ask yourself, is that really your reflection? Or is it something else? Something waiting for the right moment to smile and reach through? Mary's son and the curse of immortality. For decades, people had whispered about Mary and the curse that lingered in the shadows of the forgotten village. But few ever knew the deeper truth: betrayal not by strangers, but by blood. The fog had thickened around the group ever since they discovered the torn diary in the ruins of the church where Mary was burned alive. That book spoke not only of her agony, but of a blood pact made by someone she once trusted. And in the dim candlelight of the olden they had taken refuge in, the truth unfolded. The girl who had briefly vanished into the mirror world and returned forever changed. Sat shaking, her voice hoarse. "I saw him," she whispered. "I saw a boy, not a ghost, not exactly. He was stuck between worlds, chained by mirrors and regret. And he kept saying, 'She warned me, but I wanted to live forever.'" The group sat in silence, listening as the wind moaned outside like a grieving mother. "Who was he?" Di finally asked. Mai looked down at her trembling hands. her son. Nearly 200 years ago, when the village still breathed life and Mary had not yet become a name of fear, she was known simply as a healer, a woman with knowledge of herbs, rituals, and the old ways. But more than that, she was a mother. Her son, Elias, was all she had. He was a quiet, thoughtful boy, often found reading the strange books his mother kept, some of which dated back centuries. He was fascinated by power, by the supernatural. While Mary used her gifts to heal, Elias grew curious about how to use them to rise above mortality. As he reached manhood, Elias became obsessed with death, not avoiding it, but overcoming it. He scoured the grimoires his mother tried to hide from him, and then one day, he found it. A ritual buried in a cursed chapter titled The Unseen Offering. The text was chilling. It spoke of an ancient one who could grant a mortal eternal life, but only if the offering was pure, and the bond between them unbreakable. The stronger the love, the more powerful the pact. And so, Elias made his choice. It was a moonless night. The villagers awoke to the sound of screaming Mary's screams. They found her, bound and bloodied, in the center of her own ritual circle. Candles flickered. Strange symbols glowed red, and Elias stood over her, chanting in a voice not his own. He had summoned something not meant to be in this world. The air around them cracked like shattered bone. The Ancient One had arrived. "I offer her," Elias had said, his voice hollow, distant, in love, in blood, and in betrayal. But just before the ritual could be completed, Mary spat out a curse that silenced the wind. "You think you gain eternity," she hissed. "You gain a prison. You gain reflection. You will never leave the glass, and every time someone calls my name, you will suffer all over again." The ritual backfired. Mary burst into flames, not natural ones, but cold, pale blue fire that seemed to come from within. Her body burned to ash, but her eyes sure cursed. Furious eyes remained in the memories of all who saw. Elias vanished. Some say he died in the fire. Others claim the mirror in Mary's house cracked that night and never reflected light again. But now, centuries later, through a shattered mirror in a dead village, Maya had seen him, and he was still alive, trapped. That night, the group returned to the ruins of Mary's old home. They had to see it for themselves. The mirror. The house was mostly gone, overtaken by moss and vines. But in the far corner where the fireplace had once been, something shimmered faintly in the dark. A jagged mirror, blackened at the edges. Not reflective, not anymore. Dai stepped closer, candle in hand. As the flame neared the surface, he froze. There was a face staring back, but it wasn't his. It was a young man, pale, with hollow eyes and lips that mouthed silently. "Do you see it?" Mai asked, standing beside him. "That's Elias. That's Mary's son." And suddenly, the mirror spoke. "I tried to stop her," Elias rasped, "but she knew. She always knew." The group jumped back. The mirror pulsed with strange energy, and Elias's voice echoed again, this time deeper, as if multiple beings were speaking through him. "I was promised the stars, eternal youth, power over life and death, but I was the fool. She made sure I'd pay." The mirror began to bleed a dark, thick ooze that trickled down its frame and into the wooden floor. And then the temperature dropped. A scream, high-pitched and furious, got through the air. It was Mary, but not in pain. She was hunting. The group barely escaped the collapsing ruins as flames erupted unnaturally from the walls. Though there was no firewood, no spark, just rage, centuries-old rage. Later, back at the inn, the group replayed what they had seen, the betrayal, the curse, and what it meant. "Elias is alive," Hing said, "but imprisoned. He's a warning. Every time someone dares to say her name, my added, he suffers again. And that's why the Bloody Mary story keeps spreading. It's not just a ghost story. It's a curse carried forward by the living. What about the gift he was promised? Di asked. Was it real? It was, my said, eyes darkening. But it didn't come from a god. It came from something else. Something that feeds off betrayal. And Mary was the key that broke its hold. Her love was strong, but her wrath was stronger. That night, Mai had a dream, or perhaps it was a vision. She was standing in front of the mirror again, but this time, she wasn't alone. Mary stood beside her, in the flesh-old, burned, but unbowed. You brought my story back, Mary said, and now the pact is breaking. What do you mean? He can't hold me anymore, and I can't hold him. The curse was built on balance, love, and betrayal, memory and silence. You've broken the silence. I tried to step back, but her feet were rooted in place. Mary looked at her with eyes that held centuries of pain. Tell them. Let the world know what he did. Let the world remember me. And Elias. Mary's expression turned cold. He made his choice. She raised her hand and touched the mirror. It cracked, then shattered into countless pieces, each reflecting a different part of a dark, mirrored world. When Maya awoke, the mirror at the inn was gone. In its place was only a charred outline on the wall, and a single word scrawled in ash. Remember. Today, in some remote corners of the internet, people still talk about Bloody Mary. Most think it's just a gamey, a trick to scare children. Say her name 3 times in the mirror, and she might appear. But what if the story isn't about her vengeance, but about his punishment? What if every time her name is spoken, Elias feels the fire again? And what if, one day, someone breaks the mirror that holds him? The real horror might not be Mary. It might be what comes after her. The price of a belated apology. When Sarah stumbled out of the mirror, bruised and trembling, the room had already turned ice cold. Her friends Denny, Clara, and Min looked at her with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Her lips were cracked, her eyes bloodshot, and her voice wasn't quite hers anymore. She's still there, Sarah whispered, her tone hollow. Bloody Mary, she's watching us. Ever since the group had dared each other to summon Bloody Mary during a late-night sleepover, things had gone terribly wrong. First, the mirror cracked on its own. Then Sarah was pulled inside. And now, even after escaping, the nightmare hadn't ended, it had just begun. They thought they could fix it. They thought, maybe, just maybe, if they apologized sincerely, if they performed a ritual of repentance, they could reverse the curse. They were wrong. Clara found an old book in the restricted section of the university's library. It wasn't digital, wasn't cataloged. It was almost as if it didn't want to be found. The pages were yellow, the ink faded, but one ritual stood out. Atonement for the broken pact. It described a way to reach spirits who had been wronged, spirits who clung to pain. It involved 3 candles, a lock of hair from each offender, and a mirror that had never reflected sunlight. The book warned them, do not beg for forgiveness expecting mercy. Some spirits seek not peace but replacement. Still, what choice did they have? They gathered in Clara's basement, sealed windows, black cloth over the lone mirror, and a circle of salt around them. Each placed a lock of their hair inside a small clay bowl, and the candles were lit. Sarah read the chant aloud, her voice shaky. Spirit in the glass, soul in the cracks. We wronged you once, and now take back. Mercy we seek, your rage we fear. We offer truth, please, draw near. At first, there was silence. Then the flame on Clara's candle turned blue. A sound like fingernails scratching stone filled the room. The mirror began to fog from the inside. And then she appeared. Bloody Mary. Not a scream, not a jump scare. She just stood there, pale face, hollow eyes, blood dripping from a mouth that had been split far too wide. But what chilled them wasn't her appearance. It was her smile. A slow, knowing, cruel smile. Clara stepped forward. "We're sorry," she said, almost choking. "We didn't mean to insult you. We didn't know the story was real. Please, just please let us go." Bloody Mary tilted her head. Her reflection didn't move like a mirror, it moved like something else. Out of sync, delayed, off. "Sorry," she whispered. "You think words can undo death?" Danny, trying to be brave, shouted, "Then what do you want?" Her smile widened. "Replacement." Suddenly, the mirror cracked again. This time, blood seeped through the cracks. It didn't just reflect the room, it bled into it. Sarah screamed as one of the candles blew out on its own. Then, Clara began to convulse. Her eyes rolled back. Her mouth moved, but it wasn't her voice anymore. "She has chosen," the thing inside Clara whispered. Danny lunged forward, trying to pull her out of the circle, but the salt line burned red hot, hissing like fire. He recoiled in pain. "She's possessing her," Sarah cried. "Break the mirror." But Min froze. "No. What if that traps her forever?" Blood began to drip from Clara's nose and ears. Sarah grabbed a chair and slammed it against the mirror. Crash. Shards exploded outward. One slashed Danny's arm open. Another embedded into Min's shoulder. Clara collapsed, unconscious. Everything went dark. When they woke up, the candles were melted to puddles. The room was covered in soot. Clara was breathing barely. The mirror, gone, not broken, gauny, as if it had never existed. But something had changed. Sarah no longer cast a reflection. Not in windows, not in phones, not even in puddles. She was missing from the world. And at night, she could hear whispers. "You broke the glass," the voice hissed, "but you opened the way." They thought that was the end. They tried to move on. But each night, one by one, the group began to see things. Min was the first. He saw his mother crying in his kitchen, but she'd been dead for years. He blinked, and she was gone. Later that night, he found his bathroom mirror fogged up with 5 words scratched in condensation. "You owe me a face." Then it was Danny. He heard knocking from the back of his closet, not scratching, cocking, as if someone was tapping to a rhythm only they knew. When he opened it, nothing was there. But his reflection in the mirror behind him grinned and didn't stop when he did. He smashed every mirror in his house. Didn't matter. The reflection followed. The group reunited in desperation. They found a spiritualista woman known in whispers as Madame V. She lived alone near the edge of a forgotten cemetery, and only agreed to see them after they brought a white goat as offering. "She's not a spirit," Madame V said, reading their palms. "She's an echo, a residue of betrayal, bound not by death but by a promise." "What promise?" Clara asked. "The one your ancestors broke, the pact of blood and silence. Someone in your bloodline summoned her centuries ago and failed to pay the price." Danny whispered. "Then what does she want from us?" "She wants to be real again," Madame V said. "And for that she needs to take someone's place." A heavy silence followed. Sarah stepped back. "So she's not looking for forgiveness?" "No," V said softly. "She's looking for a door, and one of you already opened it." Suddenly, the windows shattered. Cold wind flooded the room. Sarah looked down and saw her hands were turning translucent. "She's taking me," she gasped, "because I escaped the first time." Madame V shouted an incantation, lighting a black candle and drawing a symbol on Sarah's forehead. For a moment, the air stilled. Then Bloody Mary appeared again and the broken mirror pieces scattered on the floor. She didn't look angry. She looked patient, as if this had all gone exactly how she wanted. "You asked for mercy," she whispered, "but you never gave it." Then, pointing to Sarah, "She is mine." "No," Clara screamed. "Take me instead." Mary paused. "You offer your place?" she asked, raising a bloody eyebrow. Clara hesitated. "Yes, if it means the rest of us are safe." Mary smiled and nodded. In a flash, Clara's body stiffened. Her eyes glazed over. A long crack appeared on her cheek like porcelain shattering from within. She fell backward lifeless. Sarah dropped to her knees, sobbing. Mary was gone. The mirrors no longer whispered. The house fell into a still, silent darkness. In the days that followed, Clara was buried. Her death certificate said sudden cardiac arrest, but the group knew better. Sarah could see her reflection again. Danny's closet stopped knocking. Men could finally sleep. But sometimes when Sarah walked past a dark pane of glass, she saw a flicker Clara, standing on the other side, reaching out, her lips moving in silence. One night, she dared to put her ear to the mirror, and heard one chilling phrase. She lied. There are many ways to anger the dead, but the most dangerous is offering an apology when it's already too late. Because some spirits don't want your guilt. They want your place. Never look into a mirror alone. They say mirrors are portals, not just to your reflection but to something older, something colder, and sometimes something waiting. It had been 3 days since the failed forgiveness ritual. 3 days since only one of them walked out of that abandoned house alive. Her name was Leela, and she had stopped speaking since that night. The police found her wandering barefoot along the highway at dawn, blood on her palms and scratches down her face. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only said one thing before going completely silent. She smiled at me from inside the mirror. The townspeople didn't know what to make of it. The urban legend of Bloody Mary had been passed down like bedtime warnings. Her name thrice in the mirror and she would come. But what Leela and her friends had done went far beyond childish dares. They had awakened her. They had offered her something real. And when they asked for forgiveness, she chose replacement. Leela was sent to live with her aunt after that. A quiet countryside home, far from the city. Far from noise, far from mirrors. Every single reflective surface was covered. The TV, the toaster, even the puddles in the backyard were avoided at all costs. But something had followed her. Late at night, she would hear humming, not her own, not the radio. Something soft like a lullaby but sung backwards. Sometimes, she'd wake up to see fog on the window as if someone had been breathing from the inside. Her aunt blamed it on trauma. "You went through something terrible," she'd say, hugging her tight. "But it's over now. You're safe here." Leela didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. It's never over. One rainy afternoon, while cleaning the attic, Leela found it. A cracked hand mirror, tucked away in an old wooden box under a blanket, next to faded photographs of long-dead relatives. She should have dropped it, should have smashed it, should have run. But something compelled her. Something inside the glass moved. Not a reflection, not a shadow, but a smile. That night, she locked the attic door and covered it with salt. The mirror remained upstairs, but she could feel its weight, pulling at her thoughts, calling her. In her dreams, she was standing in front of it again, in a dark hallway, alone. She never said Mary's name. She never needed to, because now Mary knew hers. The next morning, her aunt was gone. The bed untouched, her coffee cup cold, the car still in the garage. But on the bathroom mirror, someone had written in a dripping red line, "Only one left." Leela didn't scream. She didn't panic. She packed a bag, took the attic mirror, and left. She needed answers, desperately. Anything to explain why she was the one who survived, why everyone else had been taken, and why when she passed a mirror, her face no longer looked like hers. She found an old occult forum online, buried deep in a thread from 2009. A user named Miriam Slastreth had written about a ritual called the Silver Switch. According to the post, the entity known as Bloody Mary doesn't just kill, she replaces. She takes a soul, and in return, leaves a shadowy version of you that isn't quite right. If you're seeing someone else's face in the mirror, you're already halfway gone. Leela drove for hours to meet the user who posted that thread. A woman in her 70s, living in a secluded mountain cabin. Her name was Miriam, and when Leela showed her the mirror, Miriam turned pale. "You shouldn't have brought that here," she whispered. "That's not just a mirror, that's a door." Leela begged for help. Miriam explained the final step of the curse. Once all others are gone, the survivor is marked for replacement, but not by death, by erasure. Mary doesn't want you dead. She wants your life, your face, your memories, your place in the world. And when you finally accept what you see in the mirror, that's when she takes it all. There was only one thing left to try. A ritual older than the legend, passed down in whispers. It required 3 things: a piece of broken mirror, the blood of the last survivor, and the name of the person who cursed you. Mary Worth. Miriam warned her, this ritual doesn't destroy Mary. It only locks her out until someone opens the door again. Leela nodded. "I don't care. I just want to be me again." The ritual was set for midnight. The moment the candle was lit, the room grew cold. Shadows moved across the walls. Though nothing was there, Leela pressed her bleeding finger to the mirror shard and whispered, "I reject you. I reject your face. I reject your name." The glass trembled, then cracked. A scream burst from inside the mirror, high-pitched, furious, and human. The attic lights exploded. The walls shook. Miriam collapsed to the ground, chanting prayers as the room spun. Then, everything went still. The mirror had shattered. The ritual was done. Leela returned home a week later. She tried to live normally, attend classes, smile at people, laugh at jokes. But she knew something was still wrong. Every mirror she passed showed her, but it wasn't her. The eyes were colder, the smile too wide, and sometimes it winked. The final straw came one evening while brushing her teeth. She looked into the bathroom mirror, and the reflection didn't copy her. She turned to the left. The reflection turned right. She blinked. The reflection smiled. Finally alone, it whispered, "Now we can switch." Leela screamed and smashed the mirror, but the voice came from behind her now. In the shattered shards on the floor, the face was still there. Dozens of them, all smiling, all waiting. Now, she avoids mirrors. She tapes black cloth over every shiny surface. She bathes in the dark. She doesn't use her phone's front camera. She paints over window reflections. But sometimes, at the edge of her vision, she sees a smile that doesn't belong to her. And when she walks past a mirror on the street, she doesn't look, because she knows it's still watching. And next time, it won't wait for permission. They say Bloody Mary only comes if you say her name 3 times. But the truth is, once you see her face, she never really leaves. So whatever you do, never look into a mirror alone. Not unless you're ready to never come back. The price of a mirror that remembers. After everything that had happened, after the mirror, after Mary, after the blood and Screamslin was the only one left. She never spoke about that night. Not to her family. Not to the police. Not to therapists. What could she say that didn't sound insane? "My friend summoned an ancient spirit in a school bathroom, and she killed them one by one. And now I see her face in every reflection. No one would believe her. And in some twisted part of her heart, Lynn wished she didn't believe it either. But belief wasn't a choice anymore. Not when her own reflection sometimes smiled without her. For weeks, Lynn avoided all mirrors. She covered the one in her bedroom with a black cloth. She threw out her compact mirror. She brushed her teeth staring at the floor. But life doesn't let you run forever. One day, at a shopping mall, she caught her reflection in a store window and the face staring back smiled, then blinked independently. That night, she dreamed of a cold hand reaching through glass and stroking her cheek. It started subtly. First, voices whispering from inside the mirror whenever she walked past. Then, shadows moving just behind her reflection. Her own face changing for a split second. Lips twitching when hers did not. Eyes too wide. Too still. One morning, she woke up with a shard of glass under her pillow, sharp, triangular, glinting faintly in the dark. She hadn't broken anything, not in her room. She knew then, the mirror was not done with her. Lynn wasn't religious, but she turned to spiritual guidance out of desperation. She visited an old spiritual medium known in the outskirts of Hanoi. A woman people whispered could speak with spirits and cleanse curses. The medium book listened without interruption, only nodding slowly. "You say you called her," BACC said. "Bloody Mary." But the one who came wasn't a name. It was a hunger. The ritual didn't summon a ghost. It opened a door. You invited something that had been waiting. Waiting for what? Lynn asked, voice trembling. For someone to see her. For someone to believe. The woman said gravely. She feeds on reflection. Not just what's outside, but what's hidden. Guilt, secrets, shame. Lynn broke down, whispering, "I didn't want them to die." "But you didn't stop it either," BACC said quietly. "Now, you are the last witness. And mirrors never forget." That night, Lynn followed BAQC's instructions. A small ritual of salt, fire, and a prayer. She was told to burn the shard of glass under moonlight and not look into any reflective surface. For the next 24 hours, she did everything exactly as told. But at 3:17 a.m., she heard the distinct sound of glass cracking. She turned slowly. Her bedroom window felt covered by a curtain had begun to fog, forming the outline of a face from inside the glass. The next day, her phone camera would no longer work. Every photo she took showed the same image, her face, with someone standing just behind her shoulder. A pale woman with no eyes, only black, gaping holes. Lynn moved to a new apartment. No mirrors. Covered the TV when it was off. Didn't keep her phone screen lit too long. She thought maybe, just maybe, she could outlast whatever curse had attached itself to her. But the thing about mirrors is they're not just objects. They're surfaces, they're doors, and any surface that reflects can be used. One rainy evening, she walked past a puddle and saw her reflection turn its head to smile at her. At night, windows began to breathe fog from the inside, even when the air was dry. In the bathroom, despite no mirror installed, droplets formed the shape of a woman's face on the wall tiles. She couldn't take it anymore. Lynn returned to the school source of everything, the old restroom where they'd played the game. It was shut down now, ever since the incident. A fire had broken out in one of the stalls. Authorities blamed faulty wiring. Lynn knew better. She slipped into the abandoned building through a back entrance. The hallway was damp. Mildew coated the walls. The smell of old smoke still lingered. The restroom door groaned open. The lights didn't work. But Lynn didn't need them. She walked to the third stall, the one they had used. She placed her hand on the metal door. Cold as death. "I'm here," she whispered. "You've been following me, watching me." But I came back. No answer, just the sound of slow dripping water from a broken pipe. She stepped back toward the cracked mirror above the sink. It was still there, jagged, waiting. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. "Take me, if that's what you want." For a moment, silence. Thina breathed from inside the mirror. Her reflection smiled. But this time so did she. "I know what you want now," Lynn said. "You don't want an apology. You want company." Her reflection's smile widened, showing teeth that weren't hers. Thina's hand from the other side of the mirror began to press outward. Lynn reached out and touched it. No one ever saw Lynn again. Her parents reported her missing. The school refused to comment, and the restroom was finally sealed up for good. But the story didn't end there. Some say if you go to that school at night, in the right hallway, you'll still hear the sound of water dripping from a tap that no longer works. Others say a girl in a school uniform can be seen in mirrors, just for a second smiling sadly, as if she knows what's coming. The curse didn't die with Lynn. It waited. 2 years later, Min, a new student, transferred to the same school. He didn't know about Lynn. He didn't know about Bloody Mary. He didn't believe in ghost stories. Until one afternoon, he wandered down the old East Wing looking for a quiet place to eat lunch. He found a dusty bathroom, out of order taped across the door. Curiosity won. He stepped inside. The air was thick, like breathing through a wet rag. Broken tiles scattered across the floor. A large mirror above the sinks, cracked in 3 places. Min chuckled, brushing dust off the glass. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, bloody. He didn't get to finish. Later that night, Min's friend received a message on his phone. It was from Min. Just a single video. In it, Min stared into the mirror, smiling. But someone else stood behind him. Her face pale, her eyes black, her lips twisted in a grin that stretched wider than skin should allow. And as the camera continued recording, Min's smile faded. Then he whispered, "She's not in the mirror anymore." Epilogue. There are places in this world that remember pain, and some reflections never fade. The story of Bloody Mary has taken many forms. Some say she was a woman wronged, others say a witch, or a murdered queen. But in this version, she's not just a ghost. She's an echo, and every time someone dares to summon her, she grows stronger. Because mirrors don't just show us what we are, they show us what waits behind. So if you're ever alone, and you feel the urge to try that old game, think carefully before you say her name. Because once you see her smile, you never stop seeing it again. The end. Only if you don't look in the mirror.